we'll go ahead and take announcements.
Daniel Trout for the department, and Darius Ray is my primacy specialist today.
Casey Zavala on behalf of the Kasha.
Janelle
And-
Garrett, CASA.
Okay.
Lending CASA advocate.
All right. Thank y'all. So what do we have new since our court report was filed and CASA's report was filed?
I was saying the newest thing that we have is that Janelle just recently went to visit Akasha, and there were some major concerns with her having bed bug bites, and then as far as her not being in school. I spoke to Meridian about both issues, in which they were trying to say that she was seen by a doctor, but it's a lot of confusion on that end. As far as with school, they said that the school was doing STAR testing this week, and so that's why she wasn't in school this week, was because they were doing STAR testing, and that she would start next week in school after they finished STAR testing. I had also spoke with them about trying to get Akasha on birth control, in which they had set up an appointment for her. She went to that appointment, and then she actually refused. She told the doctor that she didn't want to be on birth control. She said that she wasn't having sex. And so the doctor wasn't sure how to proceed with trying to place her on birth control. I was informed that he said that he didn't know if he felt like it was an ethical issue, since she was stating that she didn't want to be on birth control. And so those are the newest things that I have, along with we are trying to potentially, we're reaching out to other HCS homes and providers to try to see if they have openings to try to get Akasha placed into a different HCS home.
Okay. All concerning. Mr. Dyer, you were shaking your head no.
Yes, ma'am. Schools do not have that right. We will loop in Pauline Taylor to see if we can't solve the situation of our child not being allowed to be at school during STAR testing.
Okay. All right.
Judge, if I may speak on that just briefly, I know that in our school district, whenever a student, I know that several of the schools, if those students are not the ones testing, they do release the students for that day. So I know that's how it is in our district. So say 5th and 6th graders are testing. Sometimes they let the younger kids stay home that day, or kind of opposite. And so they might want to check on that and see if it was a whole group of students not having to attend school that week.
And yes, Judge, we got guidance from our ed specialist this morning saying that they would need to make other accommodations for our child in school, even though that is a common practice.
Okay.
I wanted to add, I wasn't sure if I believe the reason that happened is because she had just transferred. She hadn't actually started there. This would have been her first week start.
Okay. While we're waiting to see if he gets back, let me ask Ms. Zavala, what do you know about all this? And then certainly want to hear from CASA.
Yeah, and Janelle may have the most current information because she was the one out there in person. I do want to just kind of backtrack and give some overall, the last hearing, we were really concerned about bringing her closer. We've had a series of meetings that have included the whole HCS team. It does now look like we've got some more information about how all that process works. Lots of moving parts, but they are reaching out. What we're hearing about getting her closer and keeping her in an HCS home is that a lot of those homes have a substantially older population. We're talking 40s and above. And they felt like maybe there wasn't, because she was younger and in school, it might not be in a good fit. But the most important thing seems to be that there don't seem to be any current openings. We've been included on a few emails, or at least I have. I don't know if everybody has, about, reaching out and trying to find. I think we need to be very conscious about regularly reaching out and checking on that. I don't know at this point. I mean, it sounds like the conditions that Janelle found were really bad, and just bed bugs all over. I don't know at this point. I mean, I think we were glad to have her in an HCS placement, because of the long-term possibilities of her staying. However, I don't think at this point that we're real happy with that placement. And if we have to move from an HCS placement to a more traditional placement, I think probably still would like to do that. Now we had a lot of information about schools. She's moved several times just in the last little bit between kind of connected HCS placements. And so the school that she's supposed to be in now had, when she was in it previously, had some good, they had ARD, an ARD meeting and things that she needed in place. Then she moved to a different location. Those things were not being done at school. So we had concerns about that. Now she's moved back to this one. I think if we can get her in school, the concern is not the school itself, actually. From what I can tell, the school was cooperative and gave Janelle information that they had put those ARD provisions in place when she was there. I think some of the concerns being reported by the school was even when she was there before, she wasn't being taken by placement, or when she would come home, nobody was there to get her off the bus. She'd have to ride the bus back to school and then be picked up. It sounds like some pretty significant concerns, and not necessarily from the school aspect. It sounded like the school had put in what they needed. But all that being said, it sure is sounding to me like we need to look for another possible placement for her, and definitely get her out of a bed filled with bed bugs. And Janelle can fill in more info on that. But I mean, as a team, I think we've put together a whole bunch of meetings. We're trying to figure out where we can get her. We would love to get her in an HCS placement closer to Amarillo. Right now, that does not seem to be available, so we need to look at other options.
Okay, Ms. Garrett, tell me what you found, and I'm beginning to wonder, is this something that needs to be called in?
I did call it in.
Okay.
I'll just start off there. I did make a report. We went to Houston to see the children. We went to the school first because I figured that she would already be in school. While I was at the school, they reported that whenever she was in that placement before, like Stacy said, the bus would bring her home, nobody would be there. They would have to bring her back to the school, call the staff to come and get her. And then the staff would be mad because they had to come and get her. They said that they've had trouble with that home, not only with Akasha, but other kids that have been placed in that home. She was on their computer, but they have not got her a schedule. So she was already transferred, just not a schedule. So they didn't understand why she was not in school, but they did say also before, whenever she was in that placement, that they had a lot of attendance problems with her, with them not bringing her to school. When I got to the home, I rang the doorbell, and then I knocked on the door, just in case the doorbell wasn't working, and they start hollering out the door, who is it? Who is it? And I tell them it's Casa. I want to see, I'm here to see Akasha. When they finally opened the door, they said, well, we thought you were the police, which kind of concerned me that they wouldn't open the door if it was the police. So I noticed the sores on Akasha. So I asked her to come outside and visit with me. I did take pictures. I was going to send them out. I just hadn't got there yet. She had bug bites on her face, on her chest, her arms, her legs. I asked her about it, and she said they were, first she said they were mosquito bites, and then she said, but most of them were from my bed. And I asked her if they've taken care of it. She said, well, we have to tell George. And I said, who's George? And she said, it's the person over the house. So after I visited with her a little bit and took pictures and everything, I went back to the doorway. And the lady was sitting there on the couch, and I asked her if they'd taken care of this situation. And she said she didn't know about it till today. And I asked her, did you not notice the sores on her? And she said, well, I don't work in this house. I just took her to the doctor. She said, I don't work here, which was another thing that kind of upset me or confused me, whatever. The staff that typically is in that home disappeared after we took Akasha outside to talk to her. Don't know where she went. That lady also told me, like Akasha did, that they would have to tell George. So I just felt, she's being neglected. I did not like this home. She was there before, and after our last court, she got moved to another home. And I guess there was problems in that other home with another child or something. And so they moved her back to this home. I just don't like this home. I haven't liked it from whenever I went back in October to see her, and she was in this home. And then now we've got this problem. And I did call in a report on it.
How fast can we get her out of there and even into, Is there anything temporary that we can do while we're looking for another place? I mean, that's just not, that does not sound good. That sounds like everything that, you know, people want to say is wrong with the foster care system.
Our worst nightmare.
Mhm. So what are our options? I mean, do we have any emergency shelter placement? Do we have, I mean, anything?
It,
I mean, sleeping on the floor would be better than that.
yeah, I don't know if there's availability in a step bed home in the area, if that might be a possibility. And actually all this information is very brand new. I mean, you know, this was yesterday we're talking about, or the day before. But yeah, I think emergency shelter or step bed or something. And I think at this point, even if that loses whatever qualified her for HCS, and apparently it is a crazy long process. But again, we don't want this for her, even, you know, I mean, if that's what HCS, and I don't think that's what every HCS home is, that's not what I'm trying to say. But I would say at this point, even if that messes up her qualification or whatever, I think it's worth moving her and starting over if we have to. Hopefully, if it's just a step bed, we don't have to start over.
Mr. Dyer or Mr. Ray, y'all have a handle on any of that?
Judge,
Yes, ma'am. Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. You can go ahead, Luke.
No, I'm sorry, sir. Judge, I'll get with Venus, the supervisor over this case, and immediately following today's hearings, and we can provide an update to all parties.
I mean, I want her out of there as fast as we can get her out of there.
Yes, ma'am. I feel like
I mean,
we're agreeing with you. Absolutely.
It just sounds like complete neglect.
Yes, ma'am.
She has called me at 4 a.m. They have no control, or they're not watching her. They're not caring for her.
And this is a kiddo that needs a lot of supervision. I mean,
And Judge, I don't think they lose their HCS slot. I think once a child or a young adult qualifies for the HCS slot, I believe that we've been told multiple times that follows them for life.
I would think so. I would hope
because-
so.
Well, we have other kids, and one particular kid comes to mind who qualified for the HCS slot, and she even goes home to parents for some periods of time, and then can go back into the HCS home. So it's my understanding that slot follows them, and continues to follow them. So if she's removed from the HCS home for a brief period of time, I don't believe she's going to lose it. I think it's just going to be finding another HCS slot for her.
Yeah. Well, but yeah, I want to find anything, whether it's an HCS slot or, like I said, I agree, step bed, emergency shelter, anywhere that we know she's being given the basic essential, you know, quality of life, living conditions.
I'm just saying, if she's put in a step bed or some sort of emergency shelter for a period of time, I believe that she's still going to qualify for an HCS slot whenever it comes back open.
Okay. All right, well, let's shake the trees.
Yes,
Pasha
Judge.
had previously been in a home with older residents, and she actually loved it. She felt babied and pampered, and she was really proud of helping a person far older than her, incapacitated. She was really happy to be their little helper. A temporary solution with that, I would love to see, but whatever we can find, we need to find something now.
Okay. So we don't want to rule out something where maybe there are mainly older residents. Now, all right, the birth control issue, I don't know what to do about. I mean, she's 16, she's refusing. You know, I mean, there's certainly question about her level of understanding about that. Do we have any reason to believe that there's sexual activity? Ms. Garrett?
I did leave that out. I'm sorry. I did discuss with them about the birth control. She said that the doctor refused to put her on it because she told me that she wasn't having sex. But I will tell you, I did do what we call the CFE tool with her and asked her, you know, what's your 3 wishes? Well, you know, one of her wishes is a boyfriend. I did tell the placement that, you know, it was court ordered for her to have birth control. And she just kind of acted like, well, we didn't know about it. The doctor's going to send a note. So, I mean, I don't know if it's miscommunication or what, but It's kind of like Lynn has been reporting, you know, she's very sexualized and she doesn't make good decisions.
Yeah, well, all right. I guess we make another attempt at getting that done once we get her out of this placement. It sounds like somebody's, you know what, is broken at that placement.
I will talk to her. She has previously gotten in trouble at Dayhab for over sexualized behavior. I mean, she's definitely interested, but she also has a lot of pride. And the way she was approached was actually the worst possible way for Akasha. She doesn't like to be in trouble. She doesn't really know procedure. She probably didn't understand why we were doing this, but I will talk to her. As I've stated over and over and over, I have a deathly fear of this child having a child.
Yeah, it would be the worst scenario, you know, not in her best interest at all. So, okay. Well, like I said, start looking hard, see what we can come up with, even if it's just an interim solution,
Thank you, Judge.
which I hate, you know, it's just another move. Hate it. Mr. Ray, did you have anything else? I know we lost you, so we were just trying to use our time, but
I was just going to add that Melinda is correct about her HCS slot, that she won't lose that. That follows her wherever she go. And as far as when we look for other placements, and we will definitely begin that process today. And more than likely, she will end up either in a step bed, an emergency step bed, or an RTC. But at this point, those will definitely be better than what's going on at Meridian.
yeah, I think so. Okay, well, somebody keep me in the loop and let me know what we find, if you don't mind. We're set for another review August 3rd, 2023 on a 9 o'clock docket. I guess we'll see what we find. We're here today in both cases on a review hearing. We're conducting these through the Zoom program under a finding of good cause and by a consent and agreement of the parties. And Ms. Taylor's making our record, and of course we are live streaming. Okay, we'll take announcements.
Daniel Drive for the department, and Jordan Alford is my privacy specialist today.
Stacy Zavala on behalf of the kids.
All right, what do we have new since the court reports were filed?
Well, not a whole lot since the court report was filed. Armani is now placed in a separate placement from Elsiah and Adeline. She is still having those same behaviors that she was having at the previous home with her siblings. I got an update from the LPS worker yesterday that said she was really concerned regarding her behaviors. She was instigating, agitating, and physically fighting with the other kids in the home. The caregiver also said that she's been spitting on people, slapping and pulling hair of school personnel. So really just those aggressive behaviors that she was also having in the home. So not much has changed with her. This is a therapeutic foster home that she's in, which her last one was not. So we're hoping to get some more stability with that. They haven't said anything about discharge or anything like that. So I'm hoping that is not anywhere in their minds at this point. Daryl's doing okay. Really no changes with him. He still has trouble regulating his emotions and has his good days and has his really bad days. So the last time I saw him, it was a good day. So I love it whenever I go on good days, but I have been there on those bad days. So Elsiah and Adeline are doing well. Adeline is, I feel like, always doing pretty well. There was an allegation that Elsiah touched another boy that he shared a room with. Elsiah and Adeline were both bridged last Tuesday. I haven't heard anything back from the investigator on that yet.
Hang on, I lost my county attorney.
Sorry, Yana, I just went away.
I just figured you had better things to do.
I guess I did. I don't know what they are, but I did.
I caught it. I saw immediately that she fell out. So I don't think you missed anything.
Yeah, so they were both bridged just to be safe last Tuesday. I haven't heard anything back from the investigator on that quite yet. The other kid that made this allegation, he is not in the home anymore. So he was placed out as soon as that allegation came to light, and it's just Elsiah and Adeline in the home right now. And both Elsiah and Adeline did not make any outcries. I do know that.
Okay, Ms. Zavala?
So Jordan keeps me on the loop. I've been able to speak with, we've been able to speak with all the placements. This is one where we had 2 different Zooms set up with the Quadric Oliver kids. That didn't happen. We had one set up with Armani. So I haven't seen the kids. I'm actually scheduled to see Daryl in person tomorrow in Levelland. And I agree, he has his good days and his bad days. And we just spoke with placement just, to get the last minute update. And it sounds like maybe he's had a recent pretty bad day. So I think I'm going to be getting some information on that. It's brand new. I think at the time we spoke with placement didn't even know it was coming from school, but it sounded like it was pretty bad. So hope to get more information on that. But I know that Jordan's on top of that, and placement communicates very well. I really like his placement. And it looks like maybe he was just diagnosed with diabetes and they're starting some treatment with pills. So I'm going to get some more information on that. All very new stuff, but I feel like he's in really good hands in his placement there. And they work well with him. So I have not been able to see the others, but I am getting the updates from placement, and they really go along with what Jordan was saying. Our report was that the touching may have just been touching somebody's stomach. I don't know, but I think what we are kind of hearing is that, of course, there's an investigation, and I don't know that that's been finalized yet, but it kind of sounds like maybe nothing's going to come of that investigation, and the boys have been separated. So that's what I know.
All right, well, hopefully we just get to keep them where they're at. So, okay.
I hated splitting them up even more. Armani really, her behaviors were out of control, and it was against the siblings too. So I didn't, it was like, what do I do? Do I keep them all together? She's hurting them. I don't know.
We've had this before, with bigger sibling groups sometimes it really does work out better for the kids to have some distance. Till we get a handle on it. So, yeah. You didn't really have much choice. So,
and luckily the placement seems like they understand the issues, they acknowledge the issues, but like Jordan said, they're not putting in a discharge. They seem ready, willing, and able to work with her on that. So cross fingers.
Okay. All right, then I will continue the department as permanent managing conservator, and I will continue all of the children's placements. And our next hearings will be October 12th.
Placement, kids are placed in Wichita Falls with the grandmother. Placement is starting the process to get licensed. They have chosen that they're going to go with Presbyterian out of Wichita Falls to start that process. We did have a concern pop up when this case was transferred, that mother was still having access to the kids. We have addressed that with grandmother, and she has stated that she understands, but if mom drives down there, she's not going to stop them from seeing the kids. Mother, we have let her know that, again, mom is not to have any access. I let the ad litem know that's when I talked to them that was kind of what the issue we were having with at the moment. But placement wise, she is moving forward. We are doing unannounced visits, kinship and LPS workers, and they have stated that since we've started those unannounced, there has been no concerns, but that was just something previously that was brought to my attention from reading their documentation.
Do we have any reason to believe that grandmother has allowed any kind of unsupervised contact with the mother?
So when I read the documentation and we set up a meeting with all the workers, they had stated they had brought the attention to grandma, and she has said that it's always been supervised, that she has never let the kids alone with mother but that she wouldn't stop the visits if mother's driving all this way to see them.
Well, if she adopts, then we have no control after that.
Yes.
But, my concern was, I think we found aggravated circumstances on this mother. So, which sort of kicks it up to a different level. But I guess if we're going to leave the children placed with the grandmother, then we're going to have to trust that she will be protective. And I would certainly hate to move the kids out of that home. Ms. Zavala, what's your thinking?
Well, Brandon has kept me informed, and I was aware of all that. We had previously been able to speak with grandma. We have had trouble getting a hold of her. Now, I will say, I think she's got her hands very, very full, and she is being visited by lots of different workers and contacted by lots of different workers, and she's going through the licensing process. So Brandon, next time you talk to her, if you could just kind of reinforce with her who I am and Kelly is the one that's going to be calling, and has been calling. And it may be that grandmother thinks when she responds to the caseworkers that come out and see her, or when she responds to you, that answers our phone call. But I have not been able to speak with her recently. It does look like there have been lots of different eyes on her. And like I said, Brandon's kept me in the loop on that. But I have not been able to actually have a conversation with her recently. And neither has Kelly.
Okay, well, yeah. I mean, at least we know we've got extra people looking in and checking in and out and all that. And like I said, if she's going to go through with the adoption, then, we just have to hope that she will be protective of the children. I mean, we don't want to move them, do we?
It sounds like from the reports that they're doing really well. I do think it is a lot for grandma to handle with 3 kids under the age of 4, but from what I'm hearing, it sounds like they're going well. And it sounds like generally she's protective in terms of not just letting mom take them or be but I'd be very hesitant to move them, but I don't feel like I've got a whole lot of info, I mean, other than, like I said, St. Francis has kept me informed, but.
Well, I mean, it sounds like that's the one concern. Everything else is okay. I mean, she's taking care of the kids. They're fed, they're sheltered, they're clothed, they're, cared for and all that. So, all right. Okay. Anybody have anything else?
No.
All right, then I will continue the department as permanent managing conservator, and we will continue the children's current placement with grandmother. And our next hearing date will be October 12th of the party of 2023, and that'll be on 9 o'clock. We are live streaming on our YouTube channel. Ms. Taylor is making our record. All right, we'll go ahead and take announcements.
Melinda Powell for the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services, present, ready to proceed.
Brooks Barfield for Anthony Espinoza. I'm sorry, Teresa.
It's okay. Go ahead. You go ahead. Teresa Ratliff for the mother, Sage Espinoza. Judge, I've had no contact with my client. She was served in the the Fresno County Jail in January. I did send a letter there, and that's I didn't receive any information back, and have had no contact with her. So I'm present today.
Alexander Cross. I'm here on behalf of my client, Renee Espinoza, who is the paternal grandfather of the child. I'm present and I'm ready.
Stacy Zavala on behalf of Ezekiel.
Thank you. Okay, you may proceed.
Thank you, Judge. Petitioner calls Marissa Herrera. Ms. Herrera, how are you currently employed?
At St. Francis Ministries.
Okay. And does St. Francis Ministries contract with the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services?
Yes.
And as part of that contract, does St. Francis Ministries do the casework in CPS cases?
Yes.
Okay. And are you familiar with a child by the name of Ezekiel?
Yes.
How are you familiar with Ezekiel?
I'm his permanency specialist.
Okay. And how long have you been the permanency specialist?
Since March of 2022.
Okay. Does St. Francis and CPS keep records during the ordinary course of business?
Yes.
Are the entries in the records made at or around the time an event occurs?
Yes.
Are the records made by a person with personal knowledge?
Yes.
And are you a custodian of those records?
Yes.
Have you had the opportunity to review all of the records in this case?
Yes.
Okay. And Ezekiel has been in care since 2018, is that correct?
Yes.
And were you able to review the reasons that Ezekiel is in care at this time?
Yes.
Okay. And did you review the removal affidavit and the investigative report?
Yes.
Okay. In addition to those being a part of the records, are those also filed with the court?
Yes.
Okay. And how did Ezekiel come into the care of the department?
His father was smoking methamphetamine at a gas station, and Ezekiel was in the bathroom with him during that time.
Okay. And that resulted in Mr. Espinoza being placed on deferred adjudication. Is that correct?
Yes.
And have you had the opportunity to review the exhibits that were sent out yesterday?
Yes.
And does exhibit 1, 2, 4, and 5 reflect the reasons why Ezekiel came into care?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd ask to enter exhibits 1, 2, 4, and 5 at this time, which are certified court records.
I'll admit petitioners exhibits 1, 2, 4, and 5.
And Ms. Herrera, that indicates that Mr. Espinoza is on probation for child endangerment. Is that correct?
Yes.
And engaging in conduct that endangers a child is actually a ground for termination. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Have you also learned that at this time the state has filed a motion to proceed in regards to those cases?
Yes.
Okay. I'd ask to enter exhibits 3 and 6 into evidence at this time, which are also certified copies of court documents.
No objection.
No objection, Your Honor.
No objection.
No objection.
All right, then petitioners exhibits 3 and 6 will be admitted.
Thank you, Judge. And Marissa, have you also learned that at this time, Mr. Espinoza has warrants for his arrest?
Yes.
And are those in conjunction with the fact that his probation is being revoked?
Yes.
Okay. Your Honor, I'd ask to enter exhibit 7 at this time. It is page 139 of 812 from the Potter County website that lists the active warrants. So it is from an official government website.
Okay, petitioners exhibit 7 will be admitted.
Thank you, Judge. Now, Ms. Herrera, in your review of the records, did it indicate that Mr. Espinoza had relocated to Texas at some point in time?
Yes.
And do you recall when he relocated to Texas?
He relocated. I do not have the time frame, but he was in there after the case had opened.
Okay. And at one point in time, he was having visitation with Ezekiel. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And that visitation was eventually stopped based upon therapist recommendation and approval by the court. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, since you have had the case in March of 2022, have you personally had contact with Mr. Espinoza?
No.
Have you attempted to have contact with Mr. Espinoza?
Yes.
What attempts have you made to locate Mr. Espinoza?
I've called numbers off of the diligent and accurate results. I've sent letters. I've actually had letters from his ex-wife Sage, and she gave me contact number and address, but those were not where he was at, and he did not answer those calls. And just continued efforts with the family trying to get in contact with Anthony or contact number for him.
During the time that you have had the case, has Anthony Espinoza had contact with Ezekiel?
No.
Okay. And it's your understanding that is based upon the therapist recommendation. Is that correct?
Yes.
Did St. Francis develop services for Mr. Espinoza to engage in?
Yes,
And now at one time, Mr. Espinoza, he had engaged in services, is that correct?
yes,
But to your knowledge, has Anthony Espinoza done anything in the last year?
no.
Okay. And why do you say he has not?
I have no knowledge of any of the services on his family plan that have been completed because I don't have any contact with him.
Okay. You heard earlier that he was present. Did you hear that?
Yes,
Did that surprise you?
yes,
Yeah. Why did that surprise you?
because I've never met this man. And I've called and tried so many different attempts, and I've never even known he was around and knew about the case hearings.
Did you ever reach any voicemails when you attempted to call him?
Yes, some of them were disconnected numbers and some of them were, they rang to a voicemail and I left a voicemail.
Okay. And on the numbers that you left the voicemail, did you ever receive any type of response?
No,
Okay. Are you asking the court today to terminate the parental rights of Anthony Espinoza?
yes.
Okay. Now, in regards to the mother, Sage Espinoza, in your review of the records, where was Miss Espinoza at the time of the removal?
She was incarcerated in California.
Okay. And did you locate her in California at some point in time while you had the case?
Yes.
And where did you locate her?
She's now in Fresno County Jail, incarcerated again.
Okay. I'd asked to enter Exhibit 8 into evidence at this time. It is from the Fresno County Sheriff's Office. That is the inmate search that indicates that Miss Espinoza is at the Fresno jail.
All right, petitioner's Exhibit 8 will be admitted.
Thank you, Judge. Now, Marissa, in your review of the records, does it ever indicate if Miss Espinoza reached out to St. Francis while she was not incarcerated?
No, not that I've seen.
Okay. Do your records indicate that St. Francis actually spent a lot of time looking for Miss Espinoza when she wasn't incarcerated?
Yes.
Okay. When you got the case in March of 2022, did you attempt to locate Miss Espinoza?
Yes.
Okay. And the exhibit that was just entered, that indicated she was arrested in September of 2022. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So would that mean you had the case for probably 6 months while she was not incarcerated?
Yes.
Were you ever able to locate her during that 6-month period?
No.
Did she ever reach out to St. Francis during that 6-month period?
No.
Do your notes indicate if Miss Espinoza has ever been in contact with Ezekiel during the entirety of this case?
No, she is not.
Okay. Based upon Miss Espinoza's failure to contact St. Francis when she is not incarcerated, do you believe that Miss Espinoza has essentially abandoned Ezekiel?
Yes.
And are you asking did the department develop service plans for Miss Espinoza as well?
Yes.
And were those service plans sent out to addresses for Miss Espinoza?
Yes.
Okay. And you don't know if she ever worked any of the services, do you?
No, not to my knowledge.
Okay. Now, in preparation for this case, did you review Miss Espinoza's criminal history?
Yes.
And does that criminal history indicate that Miss Espinoza is really in and out of jail regularly?
Yes.
And does that go back even to about 10 years ago, she started getting incarcerated?
Yes.
Does it appear in your review of the history that she has ever spent any extended period of time outside of the jail?
No.
And does that concern you in regards to her ability to care for Ezekiel?
Yes.
And why does that concern you?
Just because of her lifestyle, it's unstable. It's not going to be safe for him. A lot of her charges are domestic violence and drug related, and that's not a good environment for Ezekiel.
Okay. As a matter of fact, when when the child was removed, Mr. Espinoza indicated that he was trying to get Ezekiel away from his mother. Is that correct?
Yes, they had just had a domestic violence altercation and she was incarcerated for that.
Okay, and he indicated that was for an assault against him. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And when I say he, Anthony indicated that was for an assault against Anthony.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Are you asking the court today to terminate the parental rights of Sage Espinoza?
Yes.
Now, in regards to the grandfather, Renee Espinoza, were you aware that at one point in time, the court did order an ICPC home study on Mr. Espinoza?
Yes.
And was that ICPC home study completed?
Yes.
And what were the results of that ICPC home study?
California had not recommended that be a placement for Ezekiel.
Okay. I'd ask the court to take judicial notice of the ICPC home study that was filed on August 14th of 2020.
I'll take judicial notice of the ICPC home study, which was done on the intervening party, Renee Espinoza, which was denied.
Okay. Thank you, Judge. Now, Ms. Herrera, during the time that you have had the case, have you had the opportunity to speak with Renee Espinoza?
Yes.
How many times have you spoken with Mr. Espinoza?
It's been about 2 or 3 times.
Did Mr. Espinoza ever make any attempts to come to Texas to see the child?
No.
Okay. In your review of the history in the 5 years that Ezekiel has been in care, has Renee Espinoza ever visited this child?
No.
Now, did you have a conversation with Renee Espinoza in February?
Yes.
And what was that conversation in regards to?
I was trying to get in contact with Anthony and he said he gave me a number that did not work for Anthony, but he did ask for some kind of phone calls with Ezekiel or some kind of contact. And so I reached out to the therapist for recommendations and she said no.
Okay. Now, did Mr. Renee Espinoza ever follow up with you in regards to that contact?
No.
Were you able to relay to him that the therapist had said no?
No.
Okay, so in the 2 months since you spoke with Mr. Espinoza or Renee Espinoza, has he ever called to follow up, say, hey, what's going on with those phone calls?
No.
Okay. At this point in time, in your opinion, did Renee Espinoza take any actions to try to maintain a relationship with Ezekiel?
No.
Okay. Are you asking that Renee Espinoza be non-suited from this case?
Yes.
Okay, let's talk about Ezekiel. Where is Ezekiel placed?
He's placed in a foster home in Lubbock.
And he's placed with the interveners, and I'm probably going to say the name wrong, Joaquin and Isaiah. Is that correct?
Yes.
And how long has Ezekiel been in that home?
Since 2018.
Okay. So going on 5 years, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And have you had the opportunity to see Ezekiel in that home?
Yes.
How is Ezekiel in the home?
He's very great. He's always clean and acting appropriately, doing chores, helping. He's a very sweet, enjoyable child.
Okay. Have you had the opportunity to view the relationship between Ezekiel and his in the placement?
Yes.
Did we lose somebody or did people just move around?
I moved
around. Okay.
I don't think we lost anybody.
Sorry. Everybody just kind of switched positions there. And does Ezekiel, in your opinion, appear to be bonded to the foster fathers?
Yes.
How does he react whenever he's with them?
He's very obedient, respectful. They have a really good bond. You can tell that he really enjoys them.
Okay. And now Ezekiel is 8, is that correct?
Yes.
And would it be true that Ezekiel has been in that home for over half of his life at this point in time?
Yes.
Do you have any concerns at all for the care that Ezekiel is receiving?
No.
Do you believe that the foster fathers can meet all of Ezekiel's needs?
Yes.
And have they done so in the last almost 5 years?
Yes.
How is Ezekiel doing in school?
He's doing good. He has all A's. When I talk to the counselor and the teacher, they have absolutely no concerns and say he's great.
Okay, and does Ezekiel have any medical needs?
No.
Is Ezekiel in counseling at this time?
He has a therapist, but he's technically discharged from therapy because he's doing so well. But if things arise, then his foster parents seek help from the therapist and get him in sessions. But she said that he really doesn't need to go regularly because he's doing so well.
Okay, so are there any concerns at all right now for Ezekiel?
No.
And the interveners, Joaquin and Isaiah, they are considered the adoptive placement if termination is granted. Is that correct?
Yes.
And if termination is granted, is it St. Francis's position to move forward with that adoption?
Yes.
Do you believe that termination is in Ezekiel's best interest?
Yes.
Okay, and are you asking that the department be named, or that the department continue as permanent managing conservator pending an adoption?
Yes.
And do you believe that is in this child's best interest as well?
Yes.
I pass the witness.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, in your contact with Ms. Espinosa, mother, you mentioned that you have letters from Sage. Can you tell me more about that? Because those haven't been provided to me.
Yes, I sent letters to her once we found out she was incarcerated. I've received 2 letters back from her. It's a little bit confusing in her letters because she just draws a lot of pictures, and then she states that she's going to be out on the first letter, and she gives me an address to her mother's that she was living in. And then the second letter, she was still incarcerated and said she was pending going to a mental health facility. But that's the extent of the letters at this time. She does ask about Ezekiel, and so I inform her that he's doing well, he's in sports, and there's no concerns. But aside from that, I've only received 2 letters from her.
Did you advise her that the intention of the department was to terminate her rights and these individuals adopt this child?
Yes, ma'am.
And did she express any objection to that in her letters to you?
That was in my most recent letter, and so I have not received a letter back with her response to that letter yet.
Okay. And is it your understanding, I mean, I know you've testified about her being in jail, but that she has been in and out of mental health facilities as well, both during the TMC case and this case, correct?
Not to my knowledge. I've only known about the incarcerations, not the mental health facilities.
Okay. When you had contact with her, did you advise her that I was still her attorney in this matter?
No, ma'am, that was not, I did not put that in the letter.
All right. And when was your last letter to the Fresno jail?
I send them monthly, so it was probably, I can't give you the exact date, but it was the end of March, the last week of March.
Okay. And today the department is asking to terminate her rights for failure to, for constructive abandonment, correct?
Yes.
And for failure to comply with the court's orders in this case that set forth what she needed to do to have this child returned to her if that is what she was seeking.
Yes.
Okay. And did you ever have any verbal contact with her over the phone?
No, I didn't. She did attempt to call me from the jail, but it was asking me to pay money for it. And it was always at really random times in the evening and at night. And so I have not talked to her over the phone.
And how long ago has it been since you've received a phone call from her from the jail?
It's been a while. I want to say it's been a few weeks since the last attempt.
All right. And the address for her mother, is that the address was provided to me by the department in May of 22?
I'm not sure the exact address for her mother.
Did you receive any contact from any of her family members?
No.
And she was personally served at the Fresno jail, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Pass the witness.
Ma'am, you mentioned Mr. Espinoza had not worked services in over a year. Is that correct?
Yes. When I look through the history, he had completed parenting classes and rational behavior therapy classes in 2021.
Okay. And I guess just for the record, do you have a list of the services that he has completed? Obviously, you mentioned those two. Has he completed any other services that was court ordered?
No, just the parenting and the rational behavior therapy training.
Do you have records as to when the last time he actually had a visit with Ezekiel?
Yes, when I looked through the notes, it was in October of 2021.
Do those notes reflect how the visit went?
Yes, it had stated that Ezekiel did not recognize Anthony as his father.
Okay. Now you'd mentioned, well, that you'd not had any contact with Anthony Espinoza and that you were surprised he had appeared at this hearing. Do you know if Anthony Espinoza had, through your department, had a way to contact you?
Yes, his previous caseworker that he did have a little bit of contact with had given him my contact. I don't know if he received it, as far as there was no confirmation that he had my contact, but those contacts were given out to him when the caseworker changed.
But he was here logged in for to the court up about until the time the hearing took place. Is that your understanding?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Now, do you feel that Anthony would be a continuing danger at all to Ezekiel, given the fact that he's been in placement this long?
Yes.
And why would you feel that way?
Anthony is well bonded to his foster family, and he wants to be adopted by that foster family. And he doesn't recognize Anthony, and Anthony lives a very dangerous lifestyle. He also has continued criminal background, and so it just wouldn't be safe for Ezekiel to be with Anthony.
And have you been contacted? I believe have you been contacted by anybody from law enforcement to try to find Anthony in regards to this motion to revoke and a warrant?
No, I have not been in contact.
Okay. So you haven't spoken with anybody from law enforcement as to the exact court status?
No.
Do you know if Anthony Espinoza is in custody or not?
No, I do not know.
The fact that he logged in and it wasn't from a correctional facility, would that indicate that he's probably not in custody?
Yes.
Okay. Do you have any good, did he provide you any good mailing address or anything like that?
No, the last address that I had was a Lubbock address for him that him and his fiance were living in. And but when I spoke to Renee back in July, he had stated that he didn't think that Anthony was still in Lubbock anymore. In fact, the girlfriend or fiance was living with Renee at the time.
Okay.
But they did not give me any contact information for Anthony.
Okay. And in this particular case, do you feel that Ezekiel is not going to be bounced around the system and that he will probably be adopted? Is that your thoughts?
Yes, absolutely.
I'll pass the witness, Judge.
Ms. Truitt?
Thank you, Judge. Just a couple of questions. Marissa, you mentioned at Dad's last therapy session with Ezekiel that the child did not recognize Anthony Espinoza as his father. Am I recalling that correctly?
Did we lose? We lost somebody.
I don't see Marissa.
We lost Marissa.
Yeah, I started to say, wait a minute. I thought we got all the lawyers. I was trying to figure out who it was. Okay.
Marissa, I was just asking about therapy sessions that Ezekiel had with Anthony Espinoza. Your testimony was that at the last therapy session, Ezekiel did not recognize Anthony as his father. Am I right in that recollection?
Yes.
Okay, were there other expressions during therapy sessions by Anthony that were concerning to the therapist?
No, I did read that he kind of brought him a lot of toys and candy, and some of the interactions weren't the best engagement. But other than that, no.
Was there an occasion where Anthony said concerning statements to Ezekiel specifically about he was not smart enough to go to a higher grade level?
I didn't see those because the notes that I got are from the worker that they talked to the therapist. So I didn't see the exact therapy notes that stated that.
Okay, you didn't see the therapy notes that stated that?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Was there an affidavit from Lisa Smith in support of termination that provided that kind of information?
Yes, but I have not seen that.
Okay. No problem. Are you aware whether any support payments financially or with clothes or diapers or anything like that were ever supplied by Anthony Espinoza to the department for care of the child?
Not to my knowledge.
Do you know whether any kind of support like I just described was provided by Sage to the either DFPS or the foster folks to support the child, Ezekiel?
Not to my knowledge.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
I have nothing for this witness, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Ms. Let's see. I've got Ms. Ratliff, or Ms. Zavala. That's who I'm liking.
Ms. Herrera, the removal in this case was based on dad's drug use, correct?
Yes.
So as a part of his service plan, he would be required to participate in random drug screens, correct?
Yes.
Without being able to contact him, have you been able to get a drug screen for him within the last year?
No.
Would it be important to know if he was using?
Yes, ma'am.
And because you've had no information directly from him, do you have any information on where he's living, if he's working, where he's working?
No, ma'am.
And in fact, without any information from father himself, would it be correct to say that the only information that we have about what he's doing currently is probably laid out in that motion to proceed?
Yes.
And those would give you concern?
Yes.
I pass the witness.
Okay. Ms. Powell?
I have nothing further, Your Honor.
All right. Anybody else have any other questions for Ms. Herrera?
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Yeah.
All right, then. Okay, Ms. Powell, anything further or just department rest?
Petitioner rest.
Judge, I don't obviously have any witnesses or anything. I just want to make a record that I did mail a letter to the jail. I didn't get a response. My last personal contact with my client was back at the time we'd mediated this case when it went right into PMC. That was verbal contact over the phone. My contact information has never changed. It's on every report. It was on my letter. It's everything. I was not aware of the letters that she had sent back to the worker, but other than that, she was personally served in both the underlying and this proceeding. And I think I've done my due diligence at this point.
All right.
And Your Honor, for the court's information, I spoke to Mr. Rene Espinoza this morning in California and made sure that he knew to go to Zoom and log in. I had sent him an email with a link to log in and the meeting ID number. And I fully expected Mr. Rene to be here, and I'm not sure why. I think technology is not his thing.
And Mr. Barfield, no witnesses?
Your Honor, I would ask the court, if the court has not already, to double check the waiting room to see if my client has reappeared. Again, no, I have no witnesses. And I'm doing this right now. I'm checking my email right now to see if I got any response. I still have had no response for the record from my client based on the email sent to him. 2 emails sent at 11:08 and 11:10 a.m. this morning, in addition to the previous emails and phone call I made. So I would just like the record to reflect that. And I've been his attorney now throughout the case, so I don't think it's very hard to contact the office. So with that being said, no witnesses
I
already.
would call Joaquin Casados.
All right, sir, you have already been sworn, so you may proceed, ma'am.
Thank you, Judge. Joaquin, we're here about Ezekiel, and he's placed in your home. Is that correct?
Correct.
And you and your husband have been taking care of Ezekiel since he was 3 years old. Is that correct?
Yes.
And he is 8 now. Is that right?
Yes.
How long have you and your husband been married, by the way?
We've been married for 6 years.
And y'all have been taking care of Ezekiel, making sure he gets to counseling, school, whenever that began for him, and therapy and things like that. Is that true?
Yes.
During this time, since he's been placed with you, did he engage in counseling services with Diana Luera?
Yes.
Has he been discharged in a way so that he only goes as needed at this point?
Yes.
And would it at this point, what grade is he in?
He is in second grade.
And how is he doing in school?
He's doing well. He has straight A's.
And does he get involved in any other kind of activities, sports or otherwise?
He plays football in the fall, and then he loves basketball, so he plays basketball typically year round with the exception of fall because of football.
And would you agree with me that he's been thriving in those extracurricular activities and in school?
Yes.
Has Ezekiel, while he's been placed with you, asked to see his dad?
No.
Has he, since there were therapeutic visits, has he expressed any sort of being upset or being worried by any statements that were made by Anthony?
He was upset with the statement where he said that he was not smart enough to go up to a higher grade. He was very upset when he got home from that visit. I did receive a phone call already. I received a phone call and he thought it was him.
Thought it was Anthony?
Thought it was Anthony.
And how did he respond to that?
He was like, is that Anthony? Is he calling to apologize for what he said? And I told him, no, it wasn't Anthony.
Has he remained upset after that time, whenever he thought of that comment?
Yes.
Has it kind of died down since then, since there's not been continual contact with Anthony?
Yes.
And since that time, has Ezekiel asked you or your husband about visiting with dad at all?
No.
Indeed, does he refer to Anthony as dad?
No.
Who does he refer to as dad?
He refers to dad as me and my husband.
And are you and your husband, if the court were to grant termination, do you and your husband intend to adopt him?
Yes.
Do you love Ezekiel like he's your baby?
Yes.
And you're wanting to be able to have the opportunity to adopt him and make legal what y'all have been doing?
Yes.
I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Okay. And anybody have any questions for Mr. Casadas?
No, Your Honor.
No, Your Honor.
Your Honor, I just had a couple of questions.
Sure.
Do you work, sir?
Yes.
Where do you work?
I work from home. I work for an insurance company.
Okay, you're able to do that at the house?
Yes.
Okay, and what does your husband do?
He is an industrial maintenance mechanic.
Okay, do you guys make enough money to be able to successfully raise this child?
Yes.
Do you have any financial concerns with regards to becoming responsible full-time for Ezekiel?
No.
Okay, I'll pass the witness, Your Honor.
Thank you. All right, Ms. Zavala, any witnesses to call?
No witnesses, Your Honor.
All right, you have a recommendation to make.
Yes, Your Honor. For the court's information, I have previously been able to meet with Ezekiel in his home. He showed me dinosaurs and his basketball goals. I have no concerns about where he is or how he's doing. He has been thriving and continues to thrive there. As for my recommendation, it is my recommendation that parental rights be terminated for both mother and father. Based on the testimony, and I do believe that this is in Ezekiel's best interest.
All right, thank you. All right, at this time, then, I do find by clear and convincing evidence it is in the best interest of the child, Ezekiel, to terminate the parental rights between the child and his father, Anthony Espinoza, based on Texas Family Code 161.001, subsection B1, EL, and O grounds, and the best interest under 161.001, B2. Find by clear and convincing evidence it's in the best interest of the child is terminate the parental rights between the child and his mother, Sage Espinoza, based on Texas Family Code 161.001, subsection B1, the E, N, and O grounds, and best interest under 161.001, B2. I will continue the department as permanent managing conservator of the child, and I'll dismiss the intervening party, Renee Espinoza, from the case. I'll dismiss all court-appointed attorneys from the case with the exception of Ms. Pruitt, who I assume will stay on as Mr. Casadas's attorney, and then also, of course, Ms. Zavala as the child's attorney and guardian ad litem. Council, also be mindful your de novo timeframe begins to run since I've ruled in open court, and please do not file any notice of appeal if you're instructed to do so until a final order has been assigned and adopted by the referring court. To the interveners, gentlemen, thank you for persevering in this case. Thank you for sticking by this little boy. I know this has been a very long time coming. I wish I could grant the adoption, 5 minutes from now. and if I had that within my power to do, I would do it. Unfortunately, I don't have that magic wand. So y'all get through the next step, I'm sure, as quickly as you possibly can. And in advance, Ms. Truitt, where are you all going to file that?
Well, we were going to file it here in Lubbock, but we certainly would be happy to have you hear it too, Judge.
Well, it's whatever's convenient for you all. I would love to hear it. I would get approval from the referring court to do that. I don't think that would be a problem at all. So you all you file where it's convenient for you. If you do file it here, let me know, and we would love to hear it.
Yes, ma'am.
So just up to you guys. I mean, and truly, whatever is easiest for you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thank you again. You all done a terrific job with him. And I just love it when kids prove to someone that they're way smarter than what someone thought they were.
That's right.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. I appreciate everybody. Thank y'all. Everybody, I appreciate their perseverance in this case. I know this has been very lengthy. So thank y'all very much. And I hope everybody has a good rest of your day.
I was glad to see everybody.
Judge, can I speak with Luke and Marissa?